He's a man, such a man, such a man. He's a real man's man. He's a man, such a man.
Welcome to Ultraspecticus, a journey through classic Ultraman. Ultraman premiered on July 17, 1966 on TBS. No, not that TBS, Tokyo Broadcasting System. It was helmed by special effects icon Eiji Tsuburaya. Now for those who don't know, this is the man responsible for bringing a little something called Godzilla to life, as well as Mothra, Ghidorah, and countless other big Japanese monsters. Eventually, he created his own company, Tsuburaya Productions, or as it's called today for short, Supro. It was the 1960s and the advent of TV was in full effect, and Tsuburaya was helping to make the transition of kaiju from the big screen to the small screen with his first series, Ultra Q. The first official series in the Ultra franchise, but as I mentioned last time, I'll be skipping it as it has less to do with Ultramen and acted more of a mystery sci-fi story of the week. A great deal like The Twilight Zone or The Outer Limits. Ultra Q also contributed to the monster boom of the 1960s and was a monstrous television hit. Pun intended. Toys of monsters were selling like hotcakes and business was booming, and TBS wanted a new series from Tsuburaya post-haste. They wanted this next one to A. focus entirely on monsters, B. include a heroic character to aid humanity against said monsters, and C. they wanted this series to be in color unlike its predecessor. Color TV was becoming the new big thing at the time. TBS wanted to ride this wave of success and build a continuing series to introduce, what else, more kaiju. Tsuburaya and writer Tetsuo Kinjo began putting together the basic premise for this new show. A group was created to deal with creatures and strange occurrences every week, originally called the Scientific Investigation Agency, or SIA. The initial concept was dubbed Red Man. The titular hero was the last of its kind who comes to Earth and joins with a member of the SIA, acting as its human host. Production designer Toru Narita created the hero to look more humanoid as opposed to monstrous, closer to what most would envision a superhero to be, with some ideas from Tsuburaya and Kinjo thrown in. TBS approved it, and Redman was later renamed Ultraman. TBS also wanted this show to be one they could sell to American audiences, and sure enough, the same year Ultraman debuted, it was snatched up for distribution in America, where the dubbed version ran in syndication well into the mid-1980s. This is how I and several other 80s kids saw Ultraman for the first time. Well, enough backstory, let's get to the episodes and start the journey off right. And before we go any further, I should point out that if I'm butchering the names of any of the person, places, or things here, in the grand scheme of things it doesn't matter, but if you think I'm wrong, you can post in the comments as to correct me. Okay? Okay. One thing to point out is that the Monster of the Week is name-dropped at the end of every intro. This would become one of the more iconic things about Ultraman for years to come. Our first episode is Ultra Operation Number 1. We're introduced to the SSSP, the Science Special Search Party. With branches all over the world, including Japan, Paris, Brazil, and even America, their job is to investigate strange anomalies, occurrences, and protect Earth from invading space aliens. Speaking of which, a big blue orb falls into a lake. One of the members of the SSSP, Shin Hayata, was following said orb, and before he can find it, collides with a different red orb. He's absorbed into it, and inside we see a mysterious being who says he's an alien from Nebula M78.
君は一体何者だ
M78 星雲の宇宙人だ
M78 星雲の宇宙人
そうだ遠い宇宙からベムラーを宇宙の墓場に運ぶ途中ベムラーに逃げ出されてそれを追って地球に来た
ベムラー
宇宙の平和を乱す悪魔のような怪獣だ 申し訳ないことをした早田隊員、その代わり私の命を君にあげよう。
君の命を？君はどうなるんだ？
君と一心同体になるなら、そして地球の平和のために働きたい。
これは何だ？
ベータカプセル。
ベータカプセル？
困った時にこれを使うのだ。
そうするとどうなる？
心配することはない。
The SSSP, or the crew as I'm going to call them for short, arrive on the scene, but by the time they do, the orb explodes. Suddenly, the giant monster from that blue orb from earlier rises up out of the lake. Space monster Bemular. Without explaining everything, eventually Hayata uses the beta capsule to transform into Ultraman and battles Bemular.
M78 星雲の宇宙人からその命を託された早田隊員、ベータカプセルで宇宙人に変身した。マッハ5のスピードで空を飛び、強力なエネルギーであらゆる敵を粉砕する不死身の男となったのだ。それゆけ、我らのヒーロー。
As he battles, we soon see that the light on his chest begins to blink red. Wait a minute, where did that thing come from? He didn't have it when he transformed. This will become known as the color timer, a longtime staple of the show, meaning that he's almost out of energy and must hurry to defeat the monster of the week. If Ultraman depletes all of his energy, he could possibly die. Apparently, TBS asked Tsuburaya to include this color timer at the very last minute, as the hero seemed too invincible at the time and needed a handicap or Achilles heel to build drama and or suspense. Ultraman eventually wins the battle with his signature move, the Spacium Beam. Spacium is said to come from the Japanese pronunciation of the term space ray. Anyway, Ultraman takes his leave, and then Hayata runs up to his teammates. Typical Clark Kent fashion. Just as soon as all the action is done, our mild-mannered protagonist shows up. Hayata tells them that this mystery alien saved him, and when they ask his name, Hayata says he doesn't have one. So he comes up with Ultraman right on the fly.
彼って親しそうに言うけど、一体名前は何て言うんだ？
なんかないよ。
よせやい。習志野ゴンベイなんてあるもんか。
そうだな。じゃあウルトラマンってのはどうだ？
ウルトラマン？
そう、ウルトラマン。
That sounds like a fucking franchise.
Well, I should probably introduce the crew before we move on. Hayata you've met, aka Ultraman. Sometimes called Ultraman Hayata to differentiate. Akiko Fuji is the communications officer. She's not your average damsel in distress, as she comes to rescue the men more often than not. But she does need saving too every now and then. Her character was supposedly added at the last minute to include a female on the team. Daisuke Arashi is the marksman of the crew. He often wields a two-handed badass blaster called the Spider Shot. He can run in head first without thinking, but his heart is in the right place. Mitsuhiro Ide is the brains of the crew. Though he's nervous and has somewhat of a low self-esteem, he makes some amazing weapons and gadgets to help out the crew, as we'll see down the line. Isamu Hoshino is the junior member of this crew. He often gets into trouble or spots the invading aliens before anyone else, and no one believes him because he's a kid. Believe me, that happens more often than not. Captain Toshio Muramatsu, or Cap as he's often called, the head honcho and the most level-headed of the group. He's tough but fair, a former astronaut who is willing and able to fend off any and all alien attacks. Each team member comes equipped with a super gun, which they use to blast the giant monsters, and each come with several attachments like flares or special rounds. The crew gets around in the jet VTOLs, their usual mode of transportations. When not flying around, they also use special submarines. Okay, that's enough of that. I better stop before we have to turn this into the arsenal. In episode 2, Shoot the Invaders, a UFO is spotted over Japan, and when the crew investigates, they discover people frozen solid in place. They're then attacked by Zoidberg, Alien Baltan.
Hooray for me! Hooray for Zoidberg!
Eventually, Hayata discovers what Baltan is doing here, in case you couldn't guess.
嵐君無事だったのか？
君の宇宙語は分かりにくい。だから我々はこの男の脳髄を借りて 君たちの言葉を使う。
君たちは何名いるのか。
20億3000万ほどです。
Originally, Baltans just wanted to repair their ship, but decided to take over this planet instead. We also realized, thanks to Cap, what Spatium, Ultraman's signature move, also does. It's more or less the alien's kryptonite.
キャプテン、何か方法はないんですか？
スペシウムだ。
スペシウム？
火星にある物質とはそれなんだ。
地球にはないんですか？
だが、あるいは彼ならば。
彼？誰のことですか？
隼人さん！
Ultraman then uses his, X-ray vision to discover the microscopic ship of the Baltan. He guides the ship away from Earth and, did Ultraman just kill over 2 billion aliens? Well, I'm sure they were all as evil as the big one, but still, wow. Dark. In Episode 3, Science Patrol Move Out, Fuji and Hoshino investigate a disturbance near an old castle. Strange sounds could be heard from the castle, and earthquakes begin to happen as a power plant is destroyed. The culprit is revealed to be transparent monster Naranga, a monster driven underground 500 years ago. It would have stayed dormant until workers installed electrical power lines, which it fed off of and now wants more. Eventually they figure out where it'll strike next.
よし、第三火力発電所付近の住民には避難命令を出してもらう。はい。それから井出君。はい。防衛隊にも連絡して発電所の周囲を固めるんだ。オーケー。冬トンの燃料は確かめたらな。オーケー。大丈夫。
Hoshino tries to take out this monster alone, but fails.
星野君。
ウルトラマン、ネランゴやっつけてくれよ。
So Hayata tells Arashi to look after him and slips away to become Ultraman. Hayata finds a lot of reasons to slip away in this series.
あ、ウルトラマンだ。
星野くん、ウルトラマンが来てくれたのよ。
君が呼んだから来てくれたんだよね。
In Episode 4, 5 seconds before the big explosion, a rocket carrying 6 atomic bombs on its way to Jupiter, I don't want to ask what they need nukes on Jupiter for, had an accident and fell into the Pacific. One of the bombs detonated and caused a huge tidal wave. Cap tells the crew that 4 bombs have been recovered, but 1 is still missing. At the same time, a new monster appears, primordial amphibian Ragan. This Ragan has been mutated by one of the atomic bombs going off. That sounds familiar. Somehow this thing has the last bomb attached to it, so they can't attack without triggering it. Even worse, it heads to the resort where Fuji and Hoshino are staying. Hayata eventually becomes Ultraman and is able to blast him without setting off the nuke. Grabs the bomb and goes into space just before it explodes in his face. Ouch. It's okay. He got better.
ハヤタさん。ウルトラマンは死なないね、ハヤタさん。
の。大丈夫だよ。彼は不死身だよ。ん？
うん。
In episode 5, The Secret of the Miroganda, a strange green fluid comes to life and kills several people. The crew is brought in to check out these deaths. At the scene of the crimes, they find the same green fluid all over the place. Turns out the victims were part of a research team, and one of the scientists' inventions is missing.
オイリス島で採集した植物が温室から消えてるんです。
オイリス島のもの？
ああ、これがその写真です。
色があんだ。
After analyzing the green fluid, they discover it's chlorophyll mixed with plant and animal fluid. It's also radioactive. The one doing the killing, which is revealed to be a carnivorous plant, seems to want revenge on the science team for taking the Miroganda from its native soil.
Hamaguchi-san, あなたが足を抱え込まれた食虫植物もその花と同じ川の流れに沿って生えてたんですね。
ええ。
その前には食虫植物には出会わなかったんですか？
ええ。
The crew stands guard until the plant monster attacks Arashi. Instead of shooting the damn thing, they pull it off him. Then they shoot it. It falls into the water and seems to be done for, but it soon reappears in the city, now giant-sized. Its official name is called Mysterious Plant Green Monse. Arashi is blasted with pollen and the others open fire. Hayata slips away and transforms into Ultraman, who shows up to burn it down. In episode 6, the Coast Guard Command, Hoshino is playing with some friends by the sea and they see some cocoa beans being unloaded off a supply boat. One of his friends sees something in the water, a monster. But no one else sees it, so they don't believe him. An old sea captain hears Hoshino and his friends talking about the monster and tells them it may be a Gesura, a lizard that lives in South America that loves cocoa beans and eats insects and pests.
ゲスラは水の中にも住むことのできる両生類じゃからな。
Now they start to think the monster is real and they wonder what it could be doing in Japan. The crew figures out that Gesser's weakness is cocoa beans thanks to Brazil HQ and learn where the next cocoa bean shipment is so they'll know where it strikes next. Hayata gets buried in the rubble during an attack and drops his beta capsule. The others want to go help him, but they can't. They draw his attention with their super guns while Hayata reaches for his capsule and transforms. Ultraman saves the crew car before they're trampled. He tosses Gesser around and tries to break off its antenna. Then he just flies off and comes right back. Wait, what the hell? They take the fight into the drink. Ultraman rips off its antenna and Gesser sinks into the sea. In episode 7, The Bluestone of Bharati, a meteor falls to Earth and all SSSP search parties from Turkey and India branches go missing. Paris HQ asks Japan to check out where it landed. When they do reach the point, a strange barrier is seen in front of them, a wall of light. They have no choice but to fly over it and descend. A magnetic beam pulls them down to the ground and they crash. Suddenly a giant subterranean beast rises up and attacks the VTOL. Oh crap, it's a graboid!
おい、早く上がってこい。
ろ。大丈夫か。こいつだ。光の壁はこいつのせいだったんだ。しまった。俺のスパイだ。ちくしょう、これやろ。引け。はい。
They get away and find the city of Baradi, a legendary city many believe doesn't exist. Jim, a member of the SSSP Paris branch, talks to the locals in their native tongue to ascertain what's going on. They then meet the ruler of Baradi named Shartham. She says she's an Esper, which is a gift passed down in her family, and that's how she's able to understand them. She says long ago all the citizens had this ability, but because of the monster named Antlar, the city has become cut off. No one could leave. Those who did were killed by Antlar. It seems it doesn't just attack the city because of their god Noah, the one from the Ark. She takes them to a statue of their god, and it looks just like Ultraman. It holds a blue stone that protects the city. The crew surmise that 5,000 years ago, Ultraman's ancestor also protected Earth from alien threats.
ノアの神です。この青い石がこの町をアントラーから守っているのです。
あの石がなぜだろ
う。一種の魔除けかもしれん。
ノアは宇宙人だったのか。
5000年の昔、ウルトラマンの先祖は地球上に現れ、その時もやはり人類の平和のために戦っていたのか。
Just then, Antlar begins to attack the city. I guess that stone just stopped working. They blast him with their super guns, and Antlar uses his magnetism to take them away. One of the villagers tries to attack Antlar, but Hayata gets them to safety and transforms. Of course, the Queen and the others kneel, thinking their god has returned. Ultraman tries a Spacium beam, but it doesn't work. Shartham takes the blue stone from the statue and tells the crew to give it to Ultraman. Cap tosses it at Antlar, blowing it to smithereens. The villagers continue to kneel before their supposed god. Oh, please no, I don't deserve your praise. You're probably thinking of my dad or maybe my superior, who did this a long time before I got here. Gotta go. In Episode 8, The Lawless Monster Zone, a volcanic eruption occurred years ago and an advance party was sent to investigate it. No one was heard from, so the crew was called in to check it out. Meanwhile, we see two monsters duking it out. Red King, a dinosaur-esque monster, battles Chandra, a bat-like monster. Red King gains the upper hand and wins this battle. A third monster appears from the underground, Magular. The crew and the VTOL spot the battle and try not to provoke the monsters.
キャップ、ロケット砲一発で奴の盾から叩き込んでやりましょうか。
話やめるんだ。
しかしね、キャップ。
島には4人の人間がいるんだ。下手に手を出して暴れられでもしたらどうするんだ。
はい。
When they find signs of life, they discover their transceivers aren't working. Nobody can contact anyone on this island. One of the monsters from before appears, and Hayata throws a napalm grenade at it to distract it. He ends up slipping and falling into a gorge, losing his beta capsule in the process. Meanwhile, the others find a little monster called Pigmon, who isn't hostile and runs away. They mark it with a balloon bomb, yes, a balloon bomb, which literally attaches a balloon to it, and they can spot it and follow it. They find the only remaining scientist barely alive. It seems Pigmon was helping to keep him alive while the big monsters were fighting it out. Speaking of which, Red King finds them. Pigmon tries to reason with Red King and gets squished for its troubles. Cap wakes up Hayata and tells him to find the others.
SOS 信号だ。
キャップ、行ってください。
よし、じっとしておれよ。 すぐ迎えに来る。はい。
He manages to reach his capsule, which is stuck between two boulders, and transforms. In episode 9, Lightning Operation, a terrible typhoon strikes a town called Unari. The damage is substantial, even the bridge is gone. A crew of workers later spot a monster rise from the ground. It's uranium monster Gavora. The crew deploys to stop it from reaching another town which has a nuclear power plant. As you could guess from its name, it has a taste for uranium and wants more nuclear power. The crew hatch a plan to bait the monster away with a piece of uranium via helicopter. Hayata volunteers to pilot the helicopter, but surprise, Fuji and Hoshino stow away in the chopper. Like I said, they do this a lot. Hoshino tries to be a backseat driver. You want to fly this thing? Ide discovers that Gavora emits radiation when it eats, so they have to get it as far away from humans as possible. Hayata tries to drop the uranium to save some nearby kids, but gets hung up and Gavora grabs onto it, crashing the helicopter. Thankfully, he gets up and moves just before getting stepped on. He then rides Gavora like a bucking bronco. Yippee-ki-yay! He then tears off the big pedals on Gavora's neck and he convulses, then falls to the ground. I guess he had a brain hemorrhage or blood clot or something. Who knows? Weird ending. In episode 10, The Mysterious Dinosaur Base, a mad scientist plans to unleash a new monster, Jiras. Meanwhile, in Kitayama Lake, the fish population has grown exponentially, so naturally the crew is called in to check it out. This time they take the VTOL on the S-Submarine 21. Arashi in the sub investigates under the sea and finds nothing. Cap decides to be nice and lets the crew have some shore leave, even though they didn't find diddly. Ide and a reporter named Fubo go to interview Professor Nakayama, who reveals his evil plan and holds them at gunpoint, destroying Ide's communicator. Nakayama says that he and a colleague of his, Nakaido, investigated the Loch Ness years ago, where Nakaido reportedly died. Ever since then, our mad scientist here has been working on Jiras for 15 years. Cap and Fuji make their way to the lake as Ide tries to fix his communicator. Fuji spots Jiras rising out of the lake, so they land. Meanwhile, the prof runs to the lake to see his creation in action. The mad scientist tries to stop them from hurting his creation, and Cap says he's crazy. No kidding! Hayata tells them that he should study them like Professor Nakaido. But plot twist, turns out he was Professor Nakaido all along. In his madness, he runs toward Jiras, who promptly tramples him. Well, there's your Frankenstein symbolism. Creator killed by its creation. Ide gets his communicator fixed and tells the others where he is. Once they save him, Hayata slips away and transforms into Ultraman. Ultraman motions to Jiras to bring it on, and for the first time we hear Ultraman's most iconic sound ever, which will become known for years to come, his swatch! Swatch! Ultraman rips off his neck wattles, and this really pisses off Jiras. He tries to gore our hero, but Ultraman just plays Matador with him, and oh my god! Zilla! Look at the scales! Look at the tail! It's unmistakably the Big G! Okay, turn that off. As you may have guessed, this is indeed a reused Godzilla suit from 1964. So this, and any subsequent reuses aside, is probably the closest to a proper Godzilla vs. Ultraman fight as we're ever gonna get, Toku Faithful. Ultraman wins with a new move, the Ultra Slash. Yes, that's what it's called. then returns Jiru's frills to him and leaves. Well, that was nice of him. Welcome back to Ultraspecticus, a journey through classic Ultraman. When we last left our hero, he was fighting Godzilla with a bad paint job. Excuse me, a mad scientist creation. Our hero won today with the Ultra Chop. Yeah, I made an eensy-weensy goof last time, and some of you people didn't waste a minute correcting me. That was an Ultra Chop, not an Ultra Slash. In my defense, a lot of these attacks start with Ultra. Ultra Slash, Ultra Chop, Ultra Beam, Ultra Meat Lovers combo with extra cheese. Point is, I'm not perfect. I slip up every now and then. Moving right along, what dangers await Ultraman around the bend this time? In episode 11, The Rascal from Space, Hoshino and his friends see a shooting star and find a strange stone that turns into whatever the person thinks. He brings it to the crew for analysis, where it's discovered to be a living rock. I don't know, you sure it's not classic rock? Later it's stolen by a thief who turns it into a liquid, then a rocket, then a monster. Brainwave monster Gongo. He uses this monster to play tricks on people.
What the hell was that?
He then wishes the monster giant-sized. Unfortunately, he doesn't do this outside, and the ensuing chaos renders him unconscious, and he can't unwish it away. And, you guessed it, the crew has to deal with it now. In episode 12, Cry of the Mummy, an archaeological dig unearths, what else? A 7,000-year-old perfectly preserved mummy. I guess no one here watched the Universal horror movies or the more recent Hammer films, or they would realize this is a bad idea. The crew is called in to watch it, but wait, shouldn't it be in a sarcophagus or something? Okay, who put a gorilla mask on the 7,000-year-old mummy? Real mature, guys. Well, later at the Science Center, big surprise, the mummy revives and escapes. See, I told you! The mummy kills the inept guard and then the lab assistant with laser eyes. The crew goes after it and is ordered to capture it alive. Good luck! You'll need it! The spider shot brings it down, but at the same time a giant monster rises out of the same cave the mummy was found in. Mummy Monster Dodongo. Wait, Dodongo? Oh, now I have to play this.
Great! I can't wait to bomb some Dodongos!
Seems the dying cries of the mummy man awakened him and now he wants revenge. Guess he's the mummy's pet? Dodongo has the same laser eyes as the mummy, so Arashi hatches a plan to blind it, giving Hayata a chance to sneak off and naturally become you-know-who. After this ordeal, Ide becomes even more curious about Hayata's possible dual identity.
こんなになると初めから分かってればね。
かわいそうなことをしたよ。
おかしいな。あいつ本当にウルトラマンじゃないのかな。
In episode 13, Oil SOS, oil tankers are catching fire and exploding, not just in Japan, but in the Middle East as well. Sure enough, a monster's behind this. It was spotted one night by a drunk worker who witnesses a tanker truck being blown up by said monster, but of course, no one believes him. The crew is ordered to patrol Tokyo Bay anyway and find nada. Cap thinks he may be telling the truth and that the truck is connected to the oil field explosions. And right on cue, the monster attacks a tanker in the sea. Oil monster Pestar. Cap decides to lure Pestar out to sea away from the nearby oil refinery after they deduce that it is feeding on and therefore filled with oil, and is basically a living bomb. Once they're out far enough, they drop several drums of oil into the sea. I think this is doing more harm than good. I mean, you guys are gonna clean that up, right? Ide accidentally opens fire, which forces the monster onto land where it attacks a refinery. They try to shoot it anyway, but the damage has been done and the fires can't be put out, and the refinery goes up in smoke.
この地帯を一体どうしてくれるんだ。この製油所には何十万リッターという原油があるんだ。もしも全滅したら我が社は全て韓特捜隊の責任です。なんとかしてくれ。頼む。火の手から遠いタンクにオイルを移すことはできませんか。
1個空にするのに30時間はかかるんだ。とても間に合わん。
湾内で発砲したらどんなことになるか素人だって分かりそうなもんじゃないか。何が科学特捜隊だ。
Ide runs off feeling guilty for what he essentially caused while the crew splits up and looks for him, giving Hayata a chance to become Ultraman.
Ide! 勝手な行動はやめろ。我々に協力して障害に努めるんだ。
Ultraman puts out the fires with his Ultra Water Beam. See, I told you they all started with Ultra. And he did not use this before or after any other monster attacks. Why? They find Ide, who says he's quitting the SSSP, but Cap lectures him out of it right before he passes out. In episode 14, the Pearl Defense Directive, spout monster Gamakugira attacks a truck containing many lovely pearls. This upsets Fuji, who happens to love pearls. It's her birthstone. It seems this is the reason pearls have become very rare and expensive.
お客様、どうも、はい、すみません。これと申しますのも、今年に入って、養殖真珠が全滅に近い打撃を受けたからでございます。
Gamakugira feeds on the pearls it finds, and the SSSP, after investigating, spots it and opens fire. The beast sprays the VTOL with its blowhole, which renders the jet corroded and inoperable, bringing them down. Hayata crashes, again. The monster then spots some ladies having a day at the beach. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Oh, what, too stuck up for a monster, huh? Then they try a new tactic. Bait it out with explosives disguised as pearls. It eats the fake pearls, but instead of blowing up, it makes it stronger. Fuji finds Hayata injured but alive. He tells her to call the HQ and then launch the monster into the air with a missile. She reluctantly leaves and he becomes Ultraman. The crew use a missile, launching the monster into the sky, and Ultraman meets it in a head-on collision, destroying it. The pearls are now more abundant, cheaper, and Fuji gets her pearl necklace. And then some. In episode 15, Terrifying Cosmic Rays, a group of kids look at their drawings on the wall, most of which are kaiju. They laugh at one of them that looks silly to them. The boy decides to go draw some more, this time on a big pipe. He laments that he's not as good as his friends, and they come to tease him. Hey, lay off him, you jackals! It's okay, kid. True art is never understood in its own time. That night, a strange phenomenon happens. The aforementioned terrifying cosmic rays enter the atmosphere. The monster, named Gavadan, is brought to life because of said cosmic rays, and the crew attacks it. Despite it not being hostile. It doesn't even fight back. Great philosophy, guys. Shoot first, ask questions never.
The message of that movie is, all right, they're different, let's kill them.
It then sleeps. The military and crew stand guard until it wakes up. It then vanishes. The kids decide to help and redraw Gavadan, giving it some oomph. Seems solar rays had a hand in bringing it to life, which explains why it left when the sun went down. Gavadan comes back to life in its new form, and it falls asleep again. The kids want Gavadan to be more fierce next time. Wait, you want it to wreck the city? Are you kids out of your minds? So this is what kids did before video games. The next day it wakes up again, and of course, sleeps again. Riveting. This time the military moves into attack, which wakes him up and pisses him off. Have I mentioned the military can be rock stupid sometimes? The kids see this and beg them not to kill Gavadan. The crew tries to get the kids to safety, but Hayata trips and falls into a nearby reservoir, and becomes Ultraman. He doesn't kill it, but he takes it to a farm upstate where it'll be happy. I mean, to a place in outer space where it'll be happy. Gotcha.
泣くな子供たち。毎年7月7日の七夕の夜、きっとガバドンに会えるようにしよう。この星空の中で。
ガバドンも星になったのかしら、お星様に。七夕の夜、雨が降ったらどうなるんだよ。
That made water come out my eyes.
In episode 16, Science Patrol Into Space, the crew prepares to launch their first rocket into outer space. Its mission? To seek out strange new worlds. I mean, go to Venus. Yeah, let's go to planets we already know instead of interesting new ones. Hayata follows in his jet, but suddenly the signal is cut off. By a Baltan. Yep, they're back. It seems they survived Ultraman's attack after his spacium beam nearly wiped them out, and they set up home on a new planet. And they want revenge. Meanwhile, the Baltan appear before Professor Mori in the rocket and takes over his mind.
テレパシーだな。 何お前は重力バランスを思う通りに操れるというのか。
Meanwhile, Ide reveals a new weapon, the Mars 133. The crew tells Maury that they're on their way to save him, unaware that this is the Baltans' plan, and... it's a trap! While the crew is rescuing him, a separate attack force will head for Earth, and Ultraman can't be in two places at once. This is a problem.
気分の悪いんですか?
Once the crew arrives, Alien Baltan 2 appears. Surely they'll succeed where the last one failed. Cap is out cold, so Hayata transforms. Ultraman tries to finish Baltan 2 Electric Boogaloo with his Spatium Beam, but it's got a new barrier which repels it. Looks like it's not going to fall for the same trick twice. Thankfully, Ultraman kills it with a new attack, the Ultra Slash. There, I got it right this time. Happy? The Ultra Slash is a devastating buzzsaw that splits him down the middle.
That, my friends, is gonna leave a mark!
Meanwhile, the other Baltans attack the Earth. Luckily, Ultraman can teleport to another location. The downside is it drains his life energy substantially. So, there's probably a reason he won't be doing that very often. In episode 17, Passport to Infinity, a man is working on a strange blue meteor rock when it starts hovering and he disappears. This man, Mr. Yesterday, which sounds like a Doctor Who spin-off, is an explorer, and the crew try to ascertain what happened to him. The ground suddenly shakes, and the crew find him outside on the ground. The rock is with him, but it suddenly flies off. This thing's got a mind of its own. The crew discover that another piece of the same meteor is held by Mr. Yesterday's colleague, Dr. Fukui. Meanwhile, the other one is found by another scientist. When studying the rock, it cracks open and traps him in some strange otherworldly dimension. A dimension not only of sight of sound, but of mind. So putting these two rocks together could be extraordinarily dangerous. Who knows what could come out of it? Maybe a giant monster?
星野くん、ダメじゃないの。
これを一つにすると危ないんだよ。
そんなこと言ってごまかそうったってダメよ。さあ、帰りなさい。
後悔しても知らないからね。
なんとでもおっしゃい。
ねえ、本当に危ないんだ。一つにしちゃいけないんだよ。
わかったわかった。さあ、いらっしゃい。
僕はちゃんと調査してきたんだぞ。
何よ、どうしたの？話してったら。
怪獣だよ。
そんな手はもう古いわよ。
僕の言う通りにしないからだよ。
早く。
Well, don't that beat all? Meet fourth dimensional monster Bolton. Not to be confused with the Baltans from the last episode. The military moves in to stop it, but have no chance against its fourth dimensional warping powers. Hayata runs off and transforms, and I think you can all guess what happens next. In episode 18, Brother from Another Planet, a radioactive fog sweeps over Tokyo. Arashi and Ide go to investigate, but Fuji warns them it could be lethal. The team go to check it out, minus Hoshino, who's ordered to stay behind. It's okay, they got goggles on. I guess those are going to save them from the radiation. They spot a cloaked figure, and it's an alien. Shock. The alien then talks to them and introduces itself to the crew. He's Zarab from the 8th Galactic System. Zarab says he wishes to be the older brother to humanity and says it is speaking with them telepathically. Hoshino thinks Zarab is responsible for the fog. Smart boy. Zarab tries to put on the whole I come in peace bit by returning a lost rocket to Earth.
いやー、諸君、我々の兄弟。
あ
やめろ。君に尋ねたい。土星ロケットを誘導してきた理由は？
兄弟が道端で倒れてるのを見て、知らんふりができるかね。
But Cap is still not convinced, and he asks him to dispose of the fog engulfing the city. And sure enough, he can't be trusted, as Zarab brainwashes Ide, poses as Fuji, and sabotages the console. Zarab also targets Hayata and tells him he couldn't enslave the Earth with Ultraman in the way. This guy's done his homework. Zarab tries to take his beta capsule, but he doesn't find it on his person. Luckily, Hoshino sneaks in and brings his beta capsule back to him. Zarab shows up disguised as Ultraman and attacks the city, and the military fires on him. Hoshino can't believe that Ultraman has turned heel, and even worse, he can't free Hayata, so he cries. And wouldn't you know it, his magic tears cut the ropes. Oh, gimme a break! I've seen magical tears revive dead people before, but cut ropes? That's gotta be a first. Hayata tells Hoshino to get to safety while he retrieves his beta capsule. Hayata transforms, and now the real Ultraman is here to set things right. I like how they gave the fake Ultraman evil-looking eyes. Drink it in, Toku Faithful. It's the only time you'll see two Ultramen on screen together for a while. In episode 19, Demons Rise Again, the crew discover a time capsule buried 350,000 years ago. Ide, of course, is excited to see what's inside. Apparently no one around here's seen a horror movie before. Inside is a strange blue fluid and a metal reflective plate. Which Mountain Dew flavor is that, by the way? The crew takes it back to the lab for analysis, unaware that another container was unearthed by a construction dig and is hauled off in a dump truck. Later, the professor discovers the metal plate is some kind of document about what's in the capsule. Ide clumsily drops it under a lamp, and the projection shows the message clear as day. Meanwhile, the lab boys try everything to open the container with the blue stuff.
You know, men, we want a job done right, and we want it done quick. What do we need? More power! Darn right, more power.
Meanwhile, lightning strikes the area where the red container was buried, unleashing a giant monster. The big red monster, no, not him, this one, Red Fire Monster Vanilla, causes trouble. Well, long story short, the metal plate was a warning not to open the containers. The lab showers the blue container in light, and something begins to happen. Another monster is unleashed from the blue container. Whoops. Foam Monster Aberrus. Meanwhile, Vanilla and Aberrus meet face to face, but instead of hugging and catching up on old times, they decide they'd rather kill each other, so they duke it out. It's Spittin' Fire versus Crazy Foam. Who will win? No one, it seems, as Ultraman arrives to break it up. episode 20, Terror on Route 87, random attacks occur near an animal park on, you guessed it, Route 87. Earthquakes, flashing lights, and other mysterious goings-on happen near Mount Omuro Park. Cap, Hayata, and Arashi take the VTOL to investigate. They take a ski lift to the summit to talk to the guard who saw the mountain light up last night. Meanwhile, a strange boy enters the SSSP HQ and tells Fuji that the Highland Dragon Hydra is about to do something bad. Ide walks in and doesn't see anything. Neither does anybody else. Wait, are we doing a Sixth Sense thing here?
I see dead people.
Sure enough, later on the ground shakes, and what do you know? Hydra rises out of the mountain. The rock slide heads down the mountain and the team opens fire, but to no avail. Hydra flaps its wings, taking flight and spitting fire at them from the sky, so they make a run for it. It heads to Route 87 and causes more mayhem despite the best attempts to block off traffic there. Motorists stuck on the road are at the mercy of Hydra. The crew spots it and Cap executes Ultra Operation Number 2. Pretty sure that's just code for shoot the damn thing. It flies fast, but the crew keeps up and gets some missile hits in before Hydra swats Hayata and Arashi out of the sky. Arashi is awake, but Hayata is out cold. Arashi takes him to a makeshift med tent where he regains consciousness. Arashi has his moment of badass, driving a gas truck at Hydra and blowing it up. But all that does is piss Hydra off, so it chases him. Hayata manages to sneak off while the medics deal with other victims and transforms.
Ultraman! ヒドラを殺してはいけないわ。
あれウルトラマンのやつわざとヒドラを逃がしたぞ。なぜスペシウム光線を発射しなかったのか。
ウルトラマンには分かってたんだわ。ウルトラマン、ありがとう。
白鷺は乙女の化身だという伝説があるが、このヒドラも自動車事故で不幸な死を遂げた多くの少年たちの化身なのかもしれない。
ひき逃げをした運転手も自首して警察に捕まりましたよ。
これでアキラ君も天国へ行けるわね。
うん、よかった。
キャップ、ヒドラは子供たちの守り神だったのかもしれませんね。遠い昔から。
うん。それにしてもだ、なぜ武藤君の姿が藤隊員の目にだけしか映らなかったんだろう。
それなんですよ。僕もずっと疑問に思ってたんですけどね。
結局純真な心の持ち主には普通の人には見えないものが見えるっていうことじゃないかしらね、キャップ。
やられたな、みんな。
In episode 21, Breach the Wall of Smoke, Mount Omu is a tranquil spot, but one day a boy finds a bunch of dead birds everywhere. The grown-ups think this has to do with volcanic activity nearby. Meanwhile, some hikers are having a picnic on top of Mount Omu and the water begins to boil. It also emits some kind of noxious gas. They then see a monster in the smoke. Naturally, the crew is called in to check it out. Arashi shrugs it off, but Fuji is raring to go. Cap lets her go, but only because he thinks this one is not dangerous. Well, that's sexist as hell. Hoshino tags along, of course.
ダメじゃないの。いくら隊員になったからって無断で乗り込んだりして。
捨て岡の人だったら怒るんだけど、お姉ちゃんだったら優しいから、きっと連れてってくれると思ったんだ。
And they eventually find the monster in the gas. Poison gas monster Chemular. Not to be confused with Bemular in the first episode. The monster spews more gas at them, causing them to retreat. The masks they have don't help, sadly. The townspeople flee or pass out in town as Kimular heads down the mountain. Ide comes up with a new weapon, the Mad Bazooka. Ultraman wrestles with Kimular while the crew sets it up and aims. They only have one shot, so they have to make it count. And not hit Ultraman. They fire and hit it in the back while Ultraman holds it in place. Kimular limps back to the mountain and explodes. In episode 22, Overthrow the Surface, the Japan branch of the Science Patrol gets a surprise visit. Anne Morheim, a member of the Paris HQ, is here to take Hayata back with her. He's being transferred to be a trainer of new pilots for the Space Defense Force. The crew bid him farewell as he leaves with Anne, Ide saying he wasn't that useful anyway. Oh, if only he knew. Ide then later spots the same woman, but it couldn't be. She couldn't be in two places at once. Or could she? Meanwhile, some strange magnetic forces cause trouble and they discover it was a sabotage. Fuji contacts Paris and neither Hayata nor Anne have returned yet. Ide looks around and finds Anne, but surprise, it's a fake. At the same time, a monster comes out of the underground, Teleston. The crew tries to bombard the monster, but that just irritates him. The fake Anne is the one controlling Teleston, in case you couldn't notice. Meanwhile, Hayata wakes up tied to a gurney while strange beings stand around him. They tell him they are underground people and that they're 40,000 meters under the earth. Their plan is to take over the surface world, if you couldn't tell from the title. Darn, I always thought it would be Morlocks or mole people who would do that.
Woo! Morlocks! Chuds! Mole people!
There is no escape from the fortress of the moles. No, except that.
They're the ones that sent the monster, and they reveal their plan to make surface people their slaves. They kidnapped Hayata because they know he's Ultraman, and this way he can't help them. How did you guys know? You have no eyes. Did you hear him blurt it out somewhere, or are you another race of beings who inexplicably have psychic powers? Apparently the latter, as they plan to hypnotize Ultraman and use him for their nefarious bidding. They try to hypnotize him, but there's one teensy little problem. Well, let the narrator explain it.
Ultraman は光の子であった。宇宙の彼方 M78 星雲からの正義の使者ウルトラマンは、たとえ隼人が意識を失っていようと、光の国のスーパーマンだったのである。
So yeah, Hayata may be hypnotizable, but Ultraman is not. Convenient. So he escapes and grapples with Teleston. In episode 23, My Home is Earth, a peace conference is taking place in Tokyo, but plane and boat accidents keep happening to different representatives of all countries. Meanwhile, a car is run off the road and something strange happens, like it hit an invisible wall or something. Pilots say the same thing happened to them, which may be the same thing causing accidents from before. Sure enough, the same thing happens to the crew. They hear a loud noise before the car explodes. like an invisible rocket.
よく見ろ。自転車の車輪には何本という金属の矢がついてる。しかし、こうして早く回せば回すほど見えなくなる。ものすごいスピードで動くものは我々人間の目には捉えにくくなる。
そうか。あのロケットはものすごい力で振動してるっていうわけか。
They plan to blast this rocket with an alpha ray which will make it visible. It works. The rocket has been spotted, but it gets away. They chase it, but it returns fire. They blast back and hit it, causing the rocket to crash. When it does, a giant monster rises up. Metamorphosis monster Jamila.
Yo, Jamila.
How do I know its name? Someone name-dropped it.
あれはやっぱりジャミラ。なんだって
Jamila doesn't stay to fight, but runs and they open fire on it. Cap asks Alan, a member on loan from the Paris HQ, why he called that monster Jamila. It's not a monster, but a human. During the space race between the United States and the USSR, which was kind of a hot-button issue while this was taking place, one astronaut was launched into space but never came back. His name was Jamila. His loss was covered up and never mentioned. It seems though he did indeed survive and landed on an alien planet which mutated him. Now he's back to get revenge. Ide refuses to fight a human, but they have their orders. Kill Jamila without divulging his identity so the peace talks can continue. They try to convince Ide that Jamila's not a man anymore.
俺やめた。ジャミラと戦うのはやめた。何を言ってるんだ。話せよ。話せよ。よく考えてみりゃ、ジャミラは俺たちの先輩じゃないか。その人と戦えるか。しかしな、おい嵐、俺たちだってな、いつジャミラと同じ運命になるか知れないんだぞ。何をするんだ。
During the next attack, Hayata saves a young boy and is able to slip away and transform. He shoulder tackles Jamila and the two fight it out. After a slugfest, Ultraman uses his Ultra Water Current, which puts Jamila down for good. In a last tearful moment, he reaches out in sorrow for those who turn their backs on him. They even erect a plaque for Jamila outside the conference building. Well, this is kind of a downer ending. In episode 24, the Undersea Science Center, the crew is invited to the opening of What Else?, the Undersea Science Center. Over 200 guests have been invited to the Undersea Center. They go there via submarine, but something happens that rocks the boat. Was it an accident, or did something attack it? Hoshino takes the guests on tour while Fuji goes to pick up the press. Suddenly, the Undersea Center is attacked by some giant drill. Fuji sees the pipeline has been damaged. Without that, they'll have no oxygen. Hoshino tells Cap the dock is leaking, and now they're trapped. The crew wonders what they can do to save Cap and the others. They decide to use the Tortoise, a new sea vehicle, to drain the dock to get them out. Once they get there, Hayata informs Cap that they're above the center and tells them to get to the top. Suddenly, an undersea monster appears to stop the rescue. Abyssal monster Gabilla. The sub gets rammed by the monster, knocking out Arashi, and Hayata transforms. In episode 25, the mysterious comet Cephon, a comet designated Cephon is on a collision course with Earth. It seems like nothing can stop it from hitting the planet. Professor Iwamoto says it's an 83% chance it'll hit. And Ide faints. Weenie. They discover how close it is and where it could hit, and when. Tomorrow. The general consensus, though, is that it will do little to no damage. The crew gets a message from Paris HQ that the cosmic rays could set off nearby hydrogen bombs. All are accounted for and deactivated, but Ide remembers that 6 bombs were lost, and still have their detonators. Cap remembers the radiation coming from the Japan Alps, which means that's where the bombs probably are.
きっと爆発するぞ。6個も一度に爆発してみろ。猛烈な放射能で地球上の生物はみんな死んでしまうぞ。デマだよ、あの話は。デマならデマで確認しておく必要がある。よし。至急パリ本部へ問い合わせてみよう。
Thankfully, the comet doesn't hit Earth, but it did engulf it in rays. Meanwhile, at the Alps, Ricola! La, la. The crew is glad that it didn't hit, but the bombs must be recovered anyway. Suddenly, they spot a giant monster, a huge snow ape, Gigas.
Ah! Wait!
Fuji gets a report of an unidentified flying object. It's another monster, and it's after the VTOL. This new monster is named Dorako. The two monsters duke it out on the Alps. Who do we root for here? Later, Ide gets a fix on the bombs, and then another monster joins the fight. Red King 2. Yep, there's another one. It has the 6 bombs on its neck, which is bad. Red King 2 sees the two monsters fighting and wants to join the fun. Now it's a triple threat match. Red King clips Dorako's wings and teams up with Gigas for a beatdown. Dorako succumbs to its injuries and dies, while Red King and Gigas go at it. Hayata then runs off after telling Arashi which one to attack. Red King has Gigas on the ropes until Hayata blasted in the tail. He smacks Hayata, who falls and, of course, turns into Ultraman at the last minute. I should also point out that this is technically the last time we ever see Hoshino in the series, as his real-life actor suffered a leg injury and couldn't continue. They never explain what happens to Hoshino, he just disappears. In episode 26, The Monster Highness Part 1, yes, we've come to our first two-parter. Some kids are picking on another kid for believing monsters are real. Where the hell have you kids been the last 25 episodes? Under a rock? The bully kid is wearing a monster mask, so one could make the argument he brought that on himself. Might as well have taped a sign to your back that says, "Please give me a wedgie." The kid said his teacher knows some people who are going to catch one. Even his mom berates him for drawing a monster instead of getting high marks in math or grammar. Meanwhile, an expedition is underway and the science patrol is helping them find the monster. The leader of this expedition, Professor Nakaya, says that the alleged Gamorasaurus existed 150 million years ago. And as if on cue, they hear the screams of the beast. Suddenly, the Gamorasaurus smashes its way out of the mountain. Or Gamora for short, as it will come to be known. Nakaya begs Arashi not to shoot it as they want it alive. That's not how it works in this show, Prof. Later, the boy Takashi shows his classmates a newspaper clipping of Gamora, and now they believe him. Back at HQ, the crew discusses how to transport Gamora. Cap says they'll put it to sleep.
本来なら科学特捜隊の名誉にかけても体重の運び屋なんてお断りするところだが、万国博のためとあっては協力せざるを得ない。
でもキャップ、40メートルもある大怪獣を空輸するなんて無謀だと思うんですけど。
もし途中で暴れられでもしたらどうします？
眠らせるんだ。
Unfortunately, it wakes up en route to the drop-off point while the kids sneak in to see it. They're spotted by Hayata, who tells them to get to safety. He then takes them out of harm's way himself instead. Gamora is blasted by the military, but it burrows underground to get away. The crew and Professor Nakaya regroup to discuss what to do next. The kids from before play near a construction site and Gamora pops up nearby. One of the kids, Osamu, calls out for Ultraman, and what do you know, it works. Gamora uses Tail Whip, which is super effective. It somehow causes Ultraman to lose his beta capsule. Ultraman's timer nearly goes out as he tries to use his Spacium beam on Gamora as he, digs a hole. It gets away and Ultraman takes off, without his beta capsule, which the kid finds to end part 1.
Ultraman, 頑張れ。残された時間はもうわずかなのだ。
In episode 27, The Monster Highness Part 2, after the fight, Ultraman flies off and we finally see how he turns back into Hayata. Osamu's parents find him and he has the beta capsule Ultraman dropped during the battle. Cap asks Fuji to call New York HQ to get more sedative while Hayata heads back to the headquarters. Time passes with no sign of Gamora and Ide comes in with a beacon he made so they can track Gamora and hopefully take it alive. Speaking of which, it shows up in town and wastes no time wrecking the city. The crew moves in with their weapons in hand. They shoot it, as does the military, to no avail. Hayata uses the Mars 133 to aim for the tail, which hurts it. They tag it with the transmitter, so now it can be tracked just before it burrows underground again. Meanwhile, the tail they shot off is moving on its own. Talk about your phantom limbs. They blast it and it stops moving. Fuji tracks Gamora and says it's moving east towards Osaka Castle. This is bad, that's a famous landmark. Osamu realizes he has to get the beta capsule back to Ultraman, so he sneaks out. Smart kid. At least he's not being possessive and selfish and keeping it for himself. Cap actually speaks some English and asks for more sedatives from New York.
Hello, this is Muramas speaking. Could you send us UMG anodizing shot?
Gamora rises up again and they open fire. Gamora trashes the tanks while the crew moves closer. Osamu tells the guards about bringing something back to Ultraman, and not only do they believe him, but they offer him a ride. That has gotta be a first. Gamora seems unstoppable. I guess he's taking the loss of his tail really hard. Osamu runs up to Hayata and shows him he brought something to give to Ultraman. Hayata is shocked to see his beta capsule. So he didn't even know it was missing? What's with you, man? I have a minor heart attack when I misplace my smartphone for a second. Meanwhile, Cap and Arashi are stuck near a dead end. Thankfully, Hayata can now transform and comes to the rescue as Ultraman. Time for a rematch. Without its tail, Gamora is weaker and Ultraman has a sporting chance. In episode 28, Human Specimen 5 and 6, Strange bus accidents have been happening, and naturally the crew is investigating. Cap and Ide ride the next bus to where and when the supposed accidents take place. Sure enough, it happens again. The driver sees some strange colors and the bus careens over the side. Are we sure he didn't drop LSD before this? Cap wakes up next to a female passenger. He wakes her up and luckily they're both unscathed, but the bus has had it. Cap doesn't see any casualties near the wreckage and gets a closer look.
何しているんです？
バスの乗客はどうしたんだ？
とっくに収容されましたよ。もう事故から1時間経ってますからね。
1時間？そうか。それで
この高さから墜落したにしては不思議な事故ですな。全員かすり傷程度ですから。まあ一人だけ足を折った人がいましたが。
一人だけ？
家督隊の井出隊員だとか。
奴は無事だったのか。
は？
いや、ありがとう。
Cap goes to find the lady, but she sneaks off. He contacts HQ, but seems to have fallen. Meanwhile, Ide is laid up with a busted leg. Yes, not everyone got out unscathed. 2 hours later, Hayata decides to take command after not hearing from Cap and go to look for him. Speaking of Cap, he's okay and makes it to the top of the cliff. Meanwhile, a member of the research center says that an alien infiltrated the lab, but he managed to escape. Ide questions the man, but he disappears. What happened? Seems the alien captured him. The alien named Dada, yes, that's his name, Dada 271 to be precise, gets his orders to capture the specimens and take them back to their planet. We then see he shrunk down the scientist into test tubes. It needs 2 more specimens. The escaped scientist wakes up and we see Dada possess him so he can capture more people. The female passenger from before goes into the research center and is next in line to be captured until she sees an SOS. The Dada in disguise comes in and corners her.
見たな。
そう。
Cap gets the idea to shut the power off and calls for help, telling Hayata where he is. Since he's alone, Hayata transforms to deal with this problem. In episode 29, Challenge to the Underground, scientists investigate when the largest gold mine in Japan experiences earthquakes, and a big gold dragon appears. It seems to be subterranean and moves fast underground. Ide isn't worried as he has a new invention, the subterranean Velucidar. That's a mouthful. Hayata tells Ide to show it off later. The team splits up and moves out. They take the VTOLs to the mountains while the military attacks this gold monster. The crew arrive and attack it in their VTOLs until a miner waves them down. Seems a friend of his is lost in the mines and he wants them to find him. Ide uses his new ride, the Velucidar, to travel underground and discovers a cave. They hit the headlights and spot the missing mine worker. For some reason, he doesn't want to leave, though.
おい、この山には怪獣がいるんだぞ。
いいか、いくら科学特捜隊でもゴールドンに手出しをしたら承知しないぞ。
ゴールドン？
そうとも。この山の金庫を発見したのはこの俺なんだ。その宝の山を ゴルドンは台無しにしてしまった。
ゴルドンが金を食べたとでも言うの？
ひとかけらも残さずだ。
Unfortunately, they run right into the monster, Goldon. They have to get past Goldon, so they use the lasers to blast it. They have no effect, and Goldon punts the big drill. Goldon makes its way above ground as the VTOLs and military open fire. The crew is out of rockets, but Hayata has an idea. It must be weak to light if it's subterranean. They use a bazooka loaded with Corona bullets, yes, Corona bullets, and their guns to hurt Goldon, who falls over. Cap that they managed to subdue Goldon. Cap tells them the Velucidar is broken because of Goldon, but Ide fixes it. Thankfully, the Velucidar gets moving again, but runs into Goldon, blocking the hole. The miner wants out of the vehicle because he wants his gold. This guy is crazy! The ruckus knocks him out, but wait, there's two of them? To make matters worse, their oxygen is running out. Cap and Ide may be done for. Ide sees one torpedo left and they have to try to take the other Goldon out while they have air to breathe. They fire and hit it, causing Goldon to surface. When it does, Hayata transforms. In episode 30, Phantom of the Snow Mountains, we begin where else in the Snowy Mountains. Hang on, gotta do this again. Ricola! A train makes its way through the Snowy Mountains, and no, it's not Snowpiercer. At a ski resort, some men bring in a hunter they found nearly frozen to death. He says it was Woo.
Woo! Wooにやられた。ウだって？バカを言うな。今時そんなものがいるわけない。
We then get a flashback to what happened. It seems he was bear hunting in the mountains when he saw a strange girl. A snow girl, as he calls her.
逃げるな！おいこら！おい！逃げるんじゃない！
She calls on Woo to help her. Suddenly, the abominable snow monster from Rudolph shows up. Remember, Bumbles bounce. This Woo is a local myth told by the old folks, like the Yeti or Sasquatch. They then decide in the interest of public safety to call the cops to investigate. The mysterious snow girl from before overhears this. Of course, the crew are considered the better candidates than the cops, so they head out in the VTOL. Hayata, Arashi, and Ide are assigned to this mission. Meanwhile, some boys are harassing this snow girl, saying she's the one that brings out the monster. Seems the whole town is against her. She is the, quote, daughter of a snow woman. The crew lands near town, and the owner of the resort informs them about the snowy mountains that stay snowy, even in the summer. He asks them to deal with this monster, and he shows where it was spotted last. They ski to the scene of the crime, or rather their stunt doubles do. But they soon get lost as the markers don't match with the map. It's almost like someone is leading them astray. They spot the snow girl and catch her before she escapes. She thinks they are terrible people who are here to kill Woo. Woo! Hayata ends up spraining his ankle in the confusion. They ask around about the girl, and the owner explains why she is this snow girl. She's a pariah because no one truly knows where she comes from, and that they all know that she's allegedly the daughter of a snow woman. That explains a lot.
Thanks for clearing that up.
We learn that her name is Yuki. The crew thinks that maybe she's not all bad, and as if on cue, the people scream that the monster is coming. It's Woo peeking over the mountainside. Yuki tries to stop the crew from going to face it. She tries to talk Wu down, but a hunter shoots at Wu, who angers him. Yuki begs Wu to leave before they throw her out of the village, which he reluctantly does. The villagers find a frozen person and decide enough is enough and want Yuki out of their town. The resort owner wants Wu dead, and the townspeople chase Yuki, who collapses in the snow, and calls Wu yet again for help. The VTOL opens fire on Wu and ends up crashing. Yuki cries out for Wu again, which makes its way to the resort. Hayata calls for the VTOL and gets no answer, so he transforms. They roll around and this is like Ultraman fighting a living carpet. Yuki tries to talk down Wu again before Ultraman blasts it. She collapses in the ground and Wu vanishes, like he never even existed. And Yuki is dead. Wow, this is dark. Hayata wakes up Arashi and Ide after the crash and tells them Yuki went back to the mountains. It seems she was an illusion too. Or was she? Very confusing episode. In episode 31, Who Goes There?, a member of the Science Patrol returns to Japan after a lengthy service in the Bolivia branch. But strange occurrences keep happening upon his return, and Ide is rightfully suspicious, especially when he asks questions about the special alloy in the steel reinforcement around this base.
藤隊員、この建物は何製ですか？なんでできてます、この建物。
あら、普通の鉄筋コンクリートよ。
いや、その鉄筋の中に特殊な合金が加えてある。
え？
あなたはそれを知りませんか？
知らないわ。でも、そんなことはごく一部の人しか知らない秘密事項でしょ？
秘密事項。ね。
Cap finally gets suspicious and asks Ide to run a background check from Bolivia. But Ide can't reach them. At the same time, a strange plant that grows exponentially in a matter of hours gets their attention. It turns out to be carnivorous and is called Amazonian vampire plant Caronia. It seems this plant was found years ago by none other than our mystery guest's father. Coincidence? She sneaks in to investigate his room, and we see Goto is not quite human now. He zaps her with laser eyes and renders her unconscious. Hayata sneaks into his room and finds some vegetation on Goto's belongings. Lab findings indeed prove Caronia is alien and after human blood, and it came to Japan using Goto as a host. Meanwhile, the Caronia plant has grown and wreaks havoc in the factories and refineries.
I'm just a mean green mother from outer space, and I'm bad.
The Cap orders the crew to head out in the jet VTOLs. Ide and Arashi see Hayata run off for some reason. They call out to him, but he either ignores them or doesn't hear. Wink, wink. He finds a shady spot and transforms to deal with the plant. And a UFO attack force. Oh yeah, did I not mention that? Because there's that too now. In episode 32, Endless Counterattack, another visitor comes to Japan. The team draws straws to see who gets to show them around.
これで残りは当選に決定というわけですね。では行ってまいります。
おい、早田！おい！
あれなんだよこれは。何もついてない。
Our hero, a big stinky cheater.
Hayata escorts this new agent named Patty from the India branch to Japan. Meanwhile, a construction crew sees a mountain catch fire and they run for their lives. The crew heads out to suppress the fire and Hayata is alerted as well, so he and Patty run to help. The VTOL uses a new extinguisher chemical to douse the flames. It works! Neato. Just then a new monster attacks another chemical plant. This monster, named Zumbalar, has glowing scales and fiery breath. Patty and Hayata are stopped by a rock slide en route. Zumbalar trashes the plant with its limbs as it burns down around them. Hayata and Patty open fire, but it doesn't work, of course.
君は休暇中なんだ。マジのことあってはいけない。
大丈夫、任しといて。
The crew arrives in the VTOL and douses the flames, and Zumbalar disappears in the smoke. It returns and heads for more populated areas. On patrol again, Hayata runs off and heads to the high ground to see if he can spot the monster, which he does. Hayata almost transforms, but Patty runs up to tell him she's not running away. She's a member of the crew too, after all. Zumbalar easily busts its way through the tanks, shooting at it. The crew opens fire with the VTOL and Ide tries his latest invention, freezing bullet, which kinda slows it down, but it doesn't help much. Honestly, did you think it would? Hayata tries to help Patty, who passed out, while the crew goes for a ground attack. Arashi is hurt before he can use his spider shot, and Patty tells Hayata to go ahead.
Hayata, 行ってちょうだい。
待て。
人間引き際が大事ですから。私は別の方法で協力します。
じゃあ。
Good luck.
Hayata slips away and transforms and fights Zumbalar. In episode 33, The Forbidden Words, the crew enjoys a sky festival. Fuji brings her little brother Satoru, who begins to hear voices in his head. No one else hears this, and Fuji thinks he's crazy, until Hayata spots a floating boat. Wait, what the hell?
Boat! Something is something to everyone! The love boat!
They get into the company car and follow it. Suddenly the jets from the air show disappear and the boat explodes. The crew back at HQ saw the whole thing on TV. Cap tells the crew to check it out and they wonder what could be causing this. Gee, I don't know, maybe aliens? To be fair, they've been recently dealing with mummies and yetis and subterranean creatures, so aliens are due for a comeback.
上へ落ちるですって？ええ。上へ落ちるというのはおかしな表現だが、逆引力というか、特定の空間内で重力が逆に働いた結果、そういう現象が起きたのではないかと思う。
The crew takes the VTOL into space. Remember, it has rocket boosters now, and they discover a ton of wreckage and debris floating around. They spot the company car, but Hayata, Fuji, and Satoru are nowhere to be found. Luckily, they get a call about Fuji, and she's back on Earth. And she's big. She's giant-sized and is walking through town. They try to talk her down, but she doesn't respond. Meanwhile, the alien who captured them appears before Satoru, introducing itself as Alien Mephiles. Instead of invading and trying to take over the Earth by force like all the others, he detests violence and tries to take it another way. He offers a trade, the Earth for another planet. Satoru refuses and Mephiles tries to get him to change his mind. Shouldn't he be doing this with the UN, or at least the Prime Minister? I don't know. He offers him eternal life on his planet, but Satoru still refuses. Mephiles decides to try Hayata next. He knows he's Ultraman. Oh look, another alien that did his homework. He laughs at Mephiles trying to take this planet and says he won't let him. He goes for his beta capsule, but Mephiles freezes him in place. The cops try to shoot her and the crew stops them, thank God. She vanishes and then we see some familiar faces. Baltan, Zarab, and another monster, Kimur. Mephiles says he will attack the city with these three if they don't surrender. The defense force finds his ship and tries to attack, but he shoots them down. The VTOL tries to as well. The crew sneaks aboard and find Hayata frozen in place, and don't bother to question his pose or what's in his hand. They get the others down by hitting the buttons on the console, but the ship begins to shake. Ide asks what to do about Hayata, but Cap says there's no time and leaves him to die. Wow, thanks, asshole.
God damn it! You never leave a man behind!
Fortunately, Hayata falls over and the capsule activates when it hits the ground. Convenient. Ultraman gets out of there just in time before the ship explodes, and for all they know, Hayata died in there. Again, thanks, guys. Great teamwork.
よそウルトラマン、宇宙人同士が戦ってもしようがない。私が欲しいのは地球の心だったんだ。だが私は負けた。子供にさえ負けてしまった。しかし私は諦めたわけではない。いつか私に地球を売り渡す人間が必ずいるはずだ。必ず来るぞ。
In episode 34, A Gift from the Sky, it's snowing in Japan, and then it turns to rain. Hayata is ordered to bring Cap an umbrella. Man, first he abandons Hayata, and now he abuses his authority. What the hell, Cap? Later, a giant fireball fell from the sky in the middle of the night. Sure enough, it was a giant monster, Skydon. Get it? 'Cause it fell from the sky? Ugh.
Not funny!
It has fire breath and begins to set everything ablaze. The VTOL gives it everything they have, but not a scratch. Skydon then passes out. The next morning, the crew plans an operation to get rid of it. In the morning, it wakes up and they grab it with wires and hoist it up and throw it back into space. But Skydon is too massive and too heavy to transport and the jets are pulled down. This thing's built like a brick outhouse. Even Ultraman tries to do something but can't seem to phase it. He can't even lift it up or toss it around like other monsters. Doing all that drained his energy, it seems. Skydon then goes back to sleep and Ultraman decides to leave for now. Well, they try several things to get the heavy Skydon back into space, but they all fail. Now what? Then they get the plan to pump Skydon full of hydrogen by... Oh dear God. You people are sick! They pump Skydon with hydrogen, and it begins to float away. They begin to celebrate again, but some fighter jets, unaware of the situation, shoot Skydon down. Oh my God, this is becoming a regular Looney Tunes cartoon. Fuji gets the bad news and tells the others. Hayata runs outside and transforms. Ultraman runs head-on into the falling Skydon, blowing it to bits with a new attack, Aerial Body Strike. Thankfully that did the trick, and the team finally is able to relax. Hey, whatever works, I guess. In episode 35, The Monster Graveyard, the crew patrols space again in the jet VTOL. Ide and Arashi see something float by. Soon they begin to see all the monsters Ultraman defeated in the past. They dub it the Ultra Zone. They spot one creature never seen before and tell the others about this monster graveyard. Later, Ide thinks they should have a monster funeral for all the monsters they and Ultraman have beaten. Hayata storms out after hearing this and goes outside to speak his piece to his fallen foes. I kind of agree with him. He busted his butt to beat all those guys and they want to honor them. He then becomes Ultraman again. But here's a surprise. Ultraman legit feels regret for all the monsters he had to kill, proving that he's a reluctant hero and not a cold-blooded killer like some would believe he is. So the crew goes through with the monster funeral. Each fallen monster is celebrated and wished peace in the afterlife. Do you want to tell them that 90% of these monsters will come back in future series, or should I? Believe me, death is a minor inconvenience at best for Kaiju and Ultraman. Meanwhile, some scientists fire a rocket into space. Sure enough, it collides with the mystery beast in the Ultra Zone. It rides the rocket to Earth and the crew attacks in the jet VTOLs, and the monster doesn't even fight back. It climbs the tallest building in town and seems to be reaching up to the heavens. It must be wanting to go back to its final resting place. It jumps off the building. I guess it's trying to fly back, but it fails. It wanders aimlessly into the night, not attacking, just being melancholy. Poor thing, it just wants to go home. The next day, the jet VTOLs launch wires that'll drag the monster to a rocket, which they prepare to shoot into space to send it home. Wait, we're trying to send a monster back into space. Didn't we literally just do this plot one episode ago? Hayata shows up and transforms, but now the monster is seemingly mad and Ultraman attacks it. Then we get a bunch of still shots. Did the show budget run out or something? Ultraman picks the alien up and tries to send it back to space, but the fight took too long and the color timer runs out, so Ultraman has to drop him. The crew then gets the idea to make a rocket that looks like Ultraman.
一つだけ方法があります。なんだい？ロケットをウルトラマンにするんです。奴はウルトラマンが宇宙へ連れて行こうとしたことは知ってます。だからロケットをウルトラマンの格好にすれば。なるほど。よし。博士に頼んで大至急壊れたロケットを修繕してもらおう。しわっけ！くそ！
I literally can't believe that worked. In episode 36, Don't Shoot, Arashi, Cap, Fuji, and Arashi visit the Dome Children's Center, an amazing indoor facility with a concrete ceiling painted to look just like real sky. Suddenly the place shakes and an intense light comes out of the sky, blinding several people. Ide shows blueprints for his latest weapon, the QX gun, which will supposedly take out anything in an instant. I'll take that bet. Meanwhile, a new monster appears out of this red smoke and wrecks the town. Arashi uses Spider Shot, and this new monster blinds him with the same intense light from before.
Blinded by the light.
Fuji calls for backup, and the team attacks in the VTOLs. They manage to score a hit, but the same red smoke from before seeps out, and it comes back even more angrier than before. Cap is ordered by the military brass to fall back.
今度のザラガスは今までの怪獣とは違う。奴は攻撃すればするほど凶暴になっていくじゃないか。完全に一発で倒せる方法がない以上、ザラガスをむやみに刺激するわけにはいかん。そうだな、村松君。
Arashi is pissed they can't fight back, but orders are orders. Ide wants to try his new weapon, but they can't until they get the okay from the higher-ups. When Zaragas has some children at its mercy, Arashi and Hayata try to save them. He aims the QX gun, and even though he's not supposed to shoot it, he does anyway. It seems the new gun did some damage, but the center is still wrecked. He's aware of what happened, but he still has to punish Arashi for defying orders. Arashi visits Hayata and the kids in the hospital. He and the kids know Arashi did the right thing, and he boards the VTOL alone, determined to shoot Zaragas down and take it at himself. Cap and the others scream at him not to fire, as it'll anger Zaragas even more. Hayata leaves the hospital bed, runs to the roof, and transforms, despite being somewhat still blind. Once he disposes of Zaragas, Arashi is reinstated. Good for him. In episode 37, A Little Hero, a familiar monster appears in the downtown shopping center. It's our old friend Pigmon. It seems he wasn't dead after all, and he doesn't attack anybody. The crew are contacted to bring him in. Pigmon, passed out next to the toys. The Ultraman toys, to be precise. Real subtle, guys. It seems Pigmon is trying to tell them something when it wakes up, but they can't understand him. They take Pigmon back to HQ and call in a specialist, Professor Gonda, a scientist who is studying dolphin language and may be able to help understand Pigmon. Gonda listens and tries to decipher this alien language, but finds it very complicated. Arashi chews out Ide for not having the Spider Shot and Mars 133 repaired. Yeah, because they've been so strikingly useful in the past. Ide reveals he's been building a monster translator and is almost done with it. That explains why he's had no time to fix the weapons. Hayata checks on Ide, who confesses how he feels useless. No matter how much the crew tries with his inventions, it's always Ultraman who saves the day. Nothing he invents seems to pay off. Hayata tries to reassure him that they have indeed worked out in the past. Hey, even a broken clock is right twice a day, Ide. Meanwhile, Pigmon is freaking out over something and Gonda can't determine what. At the same time, a new monster rises up. And it's not alone. Some familiar foes rise up too. The next morning, the crew prepares the monster translator Ide worked all night on. Pigmon talks into the device, and it works. It turns out it's a warning. Monsters defeated by Ultraman and the crew will be revived thanks to a new monster, Geronimon. These monsters are planning an assault on the base in 5 hours. 60 monsters to be precise. Wait a minute, has Ultraman beaten that many before?
科学特捜隊とウルトラマンに倒された怪獣たちがジェロニモンの力で命を復活して科学特捜隊に復讐するため総攻撃をかける。
怪獣総攻撃？
ピグモン、本当なの？
あと5時間で世界各地から60匹以上の怪獣が日本に集結する。今のうちに早くジェロニモンを倒せ。
ジェロニモン？
ジェロニモンは怪獣の酋長だ。超能力を持っている。注意せよ。
Pigmon says it'll guide them to the monster. They spot 2 past monsters, Duraco and Teleston, sleeping. They land the VTOL and go to deal with them, but they tell Pigmon to stay behind because it's too dangerous. When the crew heads out, they wake up. They need Ultraman, but Cap says they must hold the line for now. They blast him with their sidearms and manage to knock Teleston out. Ide calls out for Ultraman, but Hayata can't transform in front of everybody. Pigmon distracts it, but gets attacked by Duraco.
Timo! Timo! Timo!
Hayata then slaps Ide to get him to stop relying on Ultraman and fight back after Pigmon sacrificed himself for them. Ide then uses his newest weapon, the Spark 8, to take down Durako, which it does. Now Geronimon, without any revived monsters, rises up. The crew opens fire, but it engulfs them with some bad breath, blowing them away. This gives Hayata the chance to slip away and become Ultraman. It tries to blast Ultraman, who uses a barrier to block it. He lifts it up in the air, giving Ide a chance to use the Spark 8 again, blasting it to bits. Ide is overjoyed that he took out the Monster of the Week for a change. And the crew congratulates Ide on a job well done. Hayata carries Pigmon's body out to them, and they pay their respects to their fallen friend. Cap makes Pigmon an honorary SSSP member for its service. Well, that was nice of him. In episode 38, Starship Rescue Command, the V2 space station is studying a Planet Q with the new Prospector probe. Suddenly, the entire lab is blinded. They call in the crew for help, and the crew is headed out to the space in their new ship, the Shiratori. Once they launch, Ide reveals yet another new weapon, the needle-type S-80. It's supposedly 10 times more powerful than the Spider Shot. Where does he come up with these names? Besides, didn't he just make a new weapon last episode that killed a monster?
Oh, who remembers?
Nah, whatever. Show's almost over. The crew finds the science team blinded by the light, but other than that, they're fine. Ide discovers a fuse has been blown, and without it, they can't get back. However, the probe has a spare one they can use to get back. But they have to venture to this Planet Q to get it, and whatever attacked the science team is waiting for them. The crew lands on Planet Q, and we see two new monsters duking it out. Keela, a beetle monster, and Saigo, a quadruped-like monster. It seems Keela has the upper hand, so Saigo flees. The crew lands and have 1 hour to get the fuse from the probe. They head out in a Land Rover, but get stuck in a ravine due to the planet's rocky terrain. Even worse, Saigo appears in front of them. They use the rover's missiles, freezing it and killing it. They manage to get free and locate the probe and proceed on foot to it. Ide procures the fuse, but Keela spots them and Arashi gets trigger-happy and fires. But that only angers it. Keela blinds Arashi, so they have to make a break back to the Land Rover. They try to make it back to the ship, but a rock slide traps them. With no way out, Hayata distracts it while the others make a beeline for the ship.
僕は嵐を見てます。迎えに来てください。すぐ出発だ。奴はまだ頑張ってますよ。僕が取りになります。よし。BM フューズを忘れるな。はい。
Hayata uses the new S-80 to distract it. Cap gets a crazy idea to puncture their oxygen tanks and use them to propel him and Ide to the ship, which they do, and it works. Keela spots them and heads towards the ship. Hayata has no choice but to transform. Ultraman uses some new tricks. Ultra Psychonesis followed by the Ultra Attack Beam. Trippy. Well, here we are, episode 39, Farewell Ultraman. What better way to end this series but with a full-on invasion? A huge squadron of ships head to Earth. They look very similar to flying saucers. Thankfully, satellite broadcasts inform every single branch of the Science Patrol of the impending danger.
キャップ、パリ本部からの緊急指令です。読みます。円盤らしき飛行物体群の地球侵入は、グリニッジ標準時間0時24分と判明した。各国支部とも防衛体制を密にせよ。ただし、円盤軍の飛来目的は未だ不明である。よってむやみに攻撃してはならない。以上です。
グリニッジ0時24分というと、日本では9時24分。あと40分しかないぞ。
And the crew gird their loins for this invasion. Professor Iwamoto tells them that this is not the first time these ships have been sighted here.
侵略だとおっしゃるんですか？
間違いないね。空飛ぶ円盤は1930年以来頻繁に地球に現れている。あれは偵察に来てたんだ。だが今度の場合スケールから言っても単なる偵察ではない。地球総攻撃。敵は40年間もそのチャンスを狙っていた。
As the clock ticks down and the ships close in, the crew and defense force prepare to fight. As predicted, the incoming groups of ships are hostile and appear on radar. It seems like they have the upper hand and the numbers to assure victory. They waste no time shooting the fighter planes out of the sky with ease. They seem to be targeting the SSSP and Ultraman, so the crew has no choice but to meet this challenge head on. They manage to fend off the first wave, but a saboteur posing as the professor enters the base. They blast the imposter, who says the word Zeton before dying. The mothership then rises up and some big blue orb emerges from it. The orb is, of course, hiding a giant monster, Zeton. The crew fights back, but to no avail. The real Professor Iwamoto has regained consciousness inside the HQ, so Arashi and Hayata try to help him. But of course, Hayata slips off to become Ultraman. When he arrives, Ultraman spins rapidly and uses a new technique called catch rings to detain Zeton, which it easily breaks out of. The crew sees Ultraman fighting Zeton, who begins to teleport all over the place, even breaking Ultraman's Ultra Slash like it's nothing. It seems our hero has met his match this time. Zeton easily overpowers Ultraman, even absorbing his Spacian beam and throwing it back at him, hitting right in his color timer. Ultraman falls to the ground unconscious. It looks like our hero is done for, Toku faithful. Zeton sees them and prepares to attack headquarters. Professor Iwamoto reveals a new weapon and gives it to Arashi.
真下前、科学センターで昨日完成したばかりの新兵器、これを持ってきたまえ。はい、ありがとうございます。試作品だからこれ一発しかない。子孫にいるじゃないぞ。はい、行こう。よし。
Suddenly, another Ultraman appears. Wait, what?
Ultraman!
Ultramanの2人?
いや、光の国の使いだよ。
Wait, how the hell do you know about that? Did Ultraman give you an interview or something? Anyway, this other Ultraman becomes a red energy ball that absorbs the original Ultraman into it. This other Ultraman is revealed to be Zophi, the Intergalactic Defense Force member from Nebula M78. He's here to take Ultraman back to the Land of Light. But he tells him his body is not his own, and if he returns, Hayata will die. Zophi says he has done enough for the Earth and should come back home. But Ultraman won't sacrifice Hayata as he's a good person.
ウルトラマン、お前はもう十分地球のために尽くしたわ。地球人が許してくれるだろう。
隼人は立派な人間になり、犠牲にはできない。私は地球に残る。
地球の平和は人間の手で掴み取ることに価値がある。ウルトラマン、いつまでも地球にいてはいかん。
ゾフィ、それならば私の命を隼人にあげて地球を去りたい。
お前は死んでもいいのか。
構わない。私はもう2万年も生きたのだ。 地球人の命は非常に短い。
Zophi agrees, and he brought 2 lives with him. Wait, lives? He brought lives with him? Like, in a video game? Is it too late to point out that Ultraman doesn't make a lick of sense? So anyway, he gives one to Hayata and the other to Ultraman and separates the 2. The crew watches Ultraman leave as Zophi takes him home. They bid him farewell as Hayata wakes up and rejoins the team. He recognizes the red sphere he crashed into and has no memory of what transpired since. Everyone says fare thee well to Ultraman, who hopes that Earth will be filled with peace and light. Thank you, Ultraman, for everything.
人類の平和と正義を守るため、遥か M78 星雲からやってきたウルトラマン。凶暴な怪獣たちを倒し、宇宙からの侵略者と戦ってくれた我らのウルトラマンがとうとう光の国へと帰る日が来たのです。ウルトラマンもこの地球が平和な光に満ちた星となることを祈っているに違いない。ウルトラマンありがとう。ウルトラマンさようなら。
I don't know about you folks, but this ending was kinda anticlimactic. So that was Ultraman. Honestly, what can I say about this show? It's a triumph of 60s science fiction. In fact, I would probably rate it very high with other groundbreaking shows of that decade. America gave the world Star Trek, the UK gave the world Doctor Who, and Japan gave the world Ultraman. I think it, like those two, have stood the test of time and cemented itself as a pop culture icon. Unlike Kamen Riders or Metal Heroes, or to a lesser extent some Sentai, Ultraman is instantly recognizable, even to a random casual person on the street who may have never even seen the show before. Much like Godzilla or Superman would be. Ultraman has become an influential beacon of light, not only in Japan, but the world. Well, that's it for this edition. Check back next time and we'll be starting with lucky number 7. No, not the 7th Ultra series, but the new Ultra in town, Ultra 7. It's less confusing than it sounds. And I'll see you in the land of light.
What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. Say it again now. What a man, what a man, what a man, what a mighty good man. Yes, he is. Stop!
Hi, こちら家督隊本部。何ですって？晴海の埋め立て地に赤い火の玉が。了解。
嵐で起きろよほら。
キャップ。
分かった。最新出動だ。ありがてえ。出動ですね。ありがてえはいいが枕をちゃんと返してこい。
それあり